Hello everyone. Hello Switzerland. So, I'm here to show you what day-to-day life looks like when millions of citizens use digital services to interact with government and public institutions in one of the most connected countries in the world, Sweden. But first, when I say Sweden, what do you think about? Well, you probably think about this, like Northern Lights, high standard of living. And I guess you also think of some of our successful export brands and companies, such as H&M, IKEA, with hard-to-assemble furniture. You think of Ingmar Bergman, perhaps, with hard-to-understand movies. And if you have teenage daughters, they probably think about Alexander Skarsgård in less difficult-to-understand TV series. But increasingly, though, Sweden is being associated with digital brands, such as these. And for the past 15 years, we have been pumping out successful internet companies out into the world. And this is a story you usually hear. But what you don't hear so much about is how the Swedish population, for the past 15 years, have turned into very digitally savvy citizens, where a vast majority do their taxes online and use government apps and mobile services. Swedes, in fact, of all ages, are highly active when it comes to digitalizing more and more aspects of our daily lives. And I think it's a nice contrast that even though we Swedes love nature, we're one of the most connected people in the world. 90% of us have broadband access. What do we do with that broadband? Well, we're very practical. So, also 90% pay bills and do bank errands online, including people well over the 70s. Also, 70% use mobile electronic IDs to log on to government sites and use their services. And if you see a couple of Swedes crunching over their mobile phones after dinner, it's not just because they are checking their Facebook accounts, it's probably because they are splitting their tab and they're sending each other money using a mobile payment service called Swish, which now half of the population uses less than 3 years after launch. So Swedes love technology. But how did we get here? Well, it's not only because of hip Swedish startup entrepreneurs who had taught us how to stream music or to make calls online. It's time to lift up some of the more unknown actors behind Swedish citizens' digital skills. And then we need to rewind to the early 90s. Look at these party people. Yes, this hip group of people is the Swedish government in the 90s. We had two governments, actually. What happened then was that government and private companies joined forces to roll out broadband nationwide. Every city, every street, every house, every person should have broadband. And the goal was clear, that Sweden by 2010 should be at the absolute forefront of using digital technology, not just having it, using it, in all aspects of society. So already here, 20 years ago, there was a clear idea that this should not be only a tool for companies to build their businesses on, it should also be a tool to interact with citizens. But still, there was a problem. In the 90s, computers were very expensive and few. Most people just had access to computers at school or at work or in a public library. So another important thing was a home PC reform. This sounds kind of socialistic, and yes, it kind of was. It was a government initiative which basically made it possible for any working Swede to rent a computer and have it at home at very low cost. And this was a big success. Just in a few years, suddenly 1.5 million have computers at home in Sweden with internet access. And in fact, in '96, internet was dubbed as Christmas gift of the year by the Swedish Trade Association. That's true. So between 1995 and 2015, internet access in Sweden grew from just 2% up to over 95% across all ages. So we have broadband, we have these really, really nice computers. It's the 90s. So this means everything is in place now to get the Swedes to start adopting new digital habits of doing stuff and communicating. And at the forefront of using this technology is not only private companies, but also a lot of government agencies. The Swedish Tax Agency, people. Well, we pay a lot of taxes in Sweden, I guess you know that, so we have a lot to do with these guys. They launched the website as early as 1996, and from the start, the traffic to this site was very high. People had internet, remember? And in 2002, they started a very popular service where you can submit your tax return papers with just one text message. So this is how it works. I punch in my social security number. I then add the number that was put on my tax return papers that was sent to me. I press send, and I'm done. So that's my tax return process for the past 14 years. And today, 72% of all Swedes do taxes digitally. Now, though, we are moving on to apps. 4 years ago, we were the first citizens to be able to do our taxes like this. And boy, did we jump at the conclusion, or at the opportunity. You know how startups, they go nuts when their apps are trending in the App Store, right? Well, this sexy app is trending every year in the App Store when it's time for the Swedes to do their tax returns. So the combination of Swedes being early adopters and we have a high level of trust in government means that new digital services that come out of public institutions are usually adopted very quickly. I'll give you another example. You probably know that we enjoy a very generous parental leave in Sweden. Parents can stay at home for 480 days in total with an allowance from the state. Then, when the kid gets older, and if your kid gets sick, you can also get a temporary benefit to cover for the days that you have been unable to work. Now, historically, applying for this temporary benefit with the insurance agency was a bureaucratic mess. Hold on, because this was the process. You wake up at home, your kid is sick. Ah, great. Who stays at home? Okay, dad stays at home this time. So dad has to file a report to the insurance agency saying, I'm at home. He then has to go to daycare when he gets the chance and have them also sign a report confirming that the child was not actually there. Then, when everything is better, dad has to file a new report when he's back to work saying, I'm back to work, guys, please send me my money. And you wait, and then you would have your money. This drove parents crazy, I tell you this. But now, since 2012, there's an app for that. And it's every parent's best friend. So what I do is that I log in with my mobile ID, I push a few buttons, and 2 days later, my money's in the bank. So the process has been reduced from days to just a couple of minutes. And I think it says a lot that there are around 1.6 million parents who interact with the insurance agency. And this app has been downloaded 1.2 million times in Sweden. And now over 90% of all benefit claims are filed digitally. And it doesn't stop there. It's usually quite tricky to reach this agency by phone if you have any questions. So they started a very popular Facebook page where parents can turn and have questions or maybe give critique, and they can expect almost instant answers. Now, almost all government agencies in Sweden are involved in digital transformations to serve citizens better. So is everything perfect in Sweden? Everything working just fine when it comes to digital services? Of course not. There's still lots of ugly, hard-to-use services out there. But when I see that government agencies are hiring UX designers, I think that's a step in the right direction. And the UX designers are needed because customer expectations are rising. They want to be able to do more and more complicated stuff with these apps. I know that both these agencies, they get a lot of feedback from users and citizens suggesting all the time new functionalities. We want to be able to do this, we want to be able to do that, and they have a hard time keeping up. Even if Sweden got a head start, The movement now to craft smart digital services to citizens is now a global trend. We're going to take a quick look at another example in Europe, and it's in the UK. In the UK, they recently launched gov.uk, where 300 government websites was put together under one roof. Now, this was a huge process, but throughout the process, the user has been in focus with a quick question. How do we make it as easy as possible for citizens to use our services? And look at how neatly you now can report a stolen passport, in your phone even. Cancel a lost passport. Start now. Where was it stolen, in the UK or abroad? In which country? And you're on your way. By their own account, launching a lot of self-services online is saving a lot of government money. More exactly, 61 million British pounds in 1 year. I haven't seen similar reports to Sweden, probably because it's been an ongoing process there for the past 15 years, so it's really hard to evaluate. But let's go back to Sweden for a while. What lies in the future? Now, we are starting to see our doctors virtually. This is an online healthcare center where you can see your doctor via a video call. This is a private company and a private healthcare clinic, but they just launched a cooperation with public healthcare. So if you live in the city of Jönköping, you can now choose to see your doctor this way as part of the standard local healthcare. And it's probably the first European, maybe even global example, where this type of e-health service is offered as part of publicly financed care. And what's even further ahead? Well, many other countries will become more like Sweden. And I'm not saying it will be colder. You will get more of our tax return stuff technique coming to you. And how can I say that? Well, because the Swedish Tax Agency have visitors and study groups coming in all the time from China, Canada, Australia, South America, to mention a few. And there's a lot of international knowledge sharing going on when it comes to electronic ID setups, etc. Artificial intelligence is also getting integrated into services. I think you probably heard about Amy, an AI that can schedule appointments for you in your email. I'm convinced AI will also be merged into government services. Just think about all the appointments made in healthcare, for example, could be done like this. Or why not a virtual tax assistant that can help you around the clock? I think that we will also see a lot more of crossover services and cooperation between private and public sector, like with this, Kry.se, where a startup might stand for the technology and where public sectors bring large-scale use cases and users to the table. But looking at the big picture, what's the point? What's the point of governments going through these massive transformations? Well, resources, obviously. From a public perspective, digital services is an investment, but pretty quickly it starts to show that it saves time and money on both ends, both for the user and for the government agency. But there's also something to be said about how this matters for the brand of the government, how they are perceived by their citizens. Because just as digital services are a way to increase customer satisfaction and brand loyalty for a private company, I believe that great government services do the same for citizen satisfaction. In fact, the more e-services that Swedish Insurance Agency has launched, the happier the clients are. The polls show that. And more importantly, the value of investing in this goes deeper than making citizens happy or satisfied in some Coca-Cola way. Because think about it. In so many countries, we interact with public institutions, whether we like it or not, at some of the most important moments of our lives. When we're born, when we're married, when we have kids, when we're sick, when we need help, when we die. What these interactions look like, both physically and digitally, matter. My favorite designer, Ilse Crawford, she made this reflection after a loved one had passed away. Being given someone's personal effects in a plastic bag only emphasizes the emptiness. Design can't make things different, but it can at the very least not contribute to the misery and potentially add dignity. And I think that's an important point that can also be applied to service design. When public institution provides great digital services that makes you more informed, allow you to spend your time better, and solve your own problems, it's not only a sense of citizen satisfaction, it's a sense of dignity. And when I file my taxes via text message, I feel like Superwoman. And when I can focus on taking care of my sick daughter instead of filling out these long forms, I feel in control of my time. And I actually like this government agency better than before. Ultimately, I believe that the reward that comes out of well-functioning government services is a higher level of mutual trust. So satisfaction, dignity, and trust. I believe these are all feelings that any government would like to build between themselves and their citizens. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kristin. That was great. We've got several questions for you.
Yeah.
Sweden started early.
Yes.
How is the government not becoming complacent? Everybody's connected, these apps are all great. How is this urgency and sense of staying ahead being propagated, and what's fueling a sense of staying ahead?
You mean for Sweden as a country?
The agencies,
or?
specifically with the government and the agencies.
Well, I think what's the key here is that it was never just the government agencies. It was always a cooperation between private sector and the public sector. They really joined forces to get this happening. First, it was between government and private telecom companies to get the broadband in the ground. But what I showed you, like a lot of people use this mobile ID. This is also cooperation between governments, like the tax agency, and lots of banks. So, for example, before I came here, I needed to pay my taxes, pay my company bills, and pay my household bills. So I was logged in simultaneously at 2 different banks and the tax agency with the same ID. It's a universal ID. So they set a standard up together, which makes it very, very easy to use and very, very highly adopted.
Okay. One of the things that I appreciated a lot was that you drew the attention, it's not an accident that these experiences are so good, that people are investing in it, UX designers are being hired. How is Sweden treating the situation of providing these generations of UX designers and people that are thinking in terms of customer experience? I know you're on the board at Malmo University. What can you share a little bit more about what's the next generation? How do they fit in? How do we assure that these people are coming into the government?
Well, I think that, the government agencies, they need to be a little bit sexier when it comes to what kind of challenges they can provide. But they do have very, very interesting challenges. I mean, a few companies can provide, like a developer or UX designer, the challenge of this is what you're building, what you're designing, will be used by millions every day. And I think that's a fantastic challenge.
Do they have trouble recruiting young designers? I mean, you mentioned the sexiness of the job. I mean, as we get older, I find it incredibly sexy, the taxes and being able to do all this thing. But if I'm a 19-year-old UX designer, Skype, tax service.
Yeah.
How are they making it sexier to come work for them?
Well, I'm not really. I don't have that much insight into how they're doing it. But I think also there's a lot of cooperation going on also between like private agencies who have who are building features and then going to the government and implementing it for them. So I think there's also some kind of movement going on there between these two, private and public sectors.
Okay. We had one last question. A lot of these were bad situations made better, painful things that remove the pain, therefore a nice experience. Do you see examples in which things are already good and people are trying to, within the government, trying to surprise and delight citizens, going beyond the expectation of just remove the pain?
Oh, surprise and delight. Well, maybe the insurance agency's Facebook page was an example of that, because no one would really expect a government agency getting a Facebook page and really using it as a day-to-day tool of very quickly responding to their client's question.
Yeah, good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please help me. Thank you.